Hello, welcome to Gold Theory. I am Gregory Yates from Goldcast. Today, I am joined by Tom Stein
of Stein,
a leading B2B creative and strategy firm based in New York City here. I'm excited to have you, Tom. And today, we're going to really talk about brand soul and strategy, building lasting impact in B2B. Tom has been in the business for quite some time. We're going to go into the history, what he's seen change across B2B marketing. We're going to kind of get to know Tom a little bit more, what he loves to do outside of work. In addition, we're going to learn about his musicianship, because I just recently learned at an A&A event that Tom is a bass player. So we're going to go into, I think, some of your favorite artists. And we're going to go into the music conversation because I am also a musician. And in fact, one of these days, we're going to have to get together and jam, of course. And so, as you may not already know, that I have put together a band in financial services. You may have to join it at some point, and we'll play an A&A event. But Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I know you have a very busy schedule, and I would love for our audience to get to know you. If you could just kind of give everyone a little bit, background on yourself, and just let it go. Just tell us everything you know right off the bat.
Well, that's a lot, Greg. But first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed getting to know you, and really value this opportunity to have the conversation. So the let it go. So just I'm Tom Stein. Obviously, I'm the chairman and chief brand officer at Stein. So we're a global B2B agency, and we work across major B2B sectors that include life sciences and technology and financial services and professional services, and pretty much you name it when it comes to the world of B2B, which we know very well. I know very well, and I've worked in it pretty much for the entirety of my career. And I am I'm very happy to be about 40 years into this. And one thing that is I think always people find interesting and maybe weird is that I've had two jobs in my life, Greg. So the first job that I had was say, call it on the client side for a B2B trade publishing company where I was a writer. I started out as a writer, direct response writer, and marketing manager. And somehow or other, a couple of years into that, when I was in my mid-20s, I thought, well, why don't you just go start an ad agency? And so that's what I did. I started Stein a long, long time ago, and so I managed to hold on to this job for a long time.
Wow, that's a great accomplishment, because I've just throughout my career, I've just seen agencies come and go, right? It's not easy, right? Especially to sustain clients. And again, that's why I wanted to name this brand, soul, and strategy, because when I think about agencies and you're like talking about your background and the way that you help clients, is you really are beyond just, even though you started kind of direct marketing, it's kind of beyond that. You're all about what is the brand? How do I establish that emotional connection? And then the soul, how do you essentially humanize a brand, right? It's how do you take this B2B entity and position it and really turn it into something that's a living, breathing entity that can communicate with others? And then of course, strategy, the ability to essentially connect a marketing goal to the business goal. And your firm does that at an exceptional rate and pace and ability for its clients. I think it's magical. As well as, I do have to say, we're already approaching the music conversation, because you started out with "Let It Go," "Let It Go." So I'm assuming we're already getting into hit songs. So,
we'll see. Hit songs are not my strength, but a lot of good songs are my strength, but not necessarily good.
So over this period, though, you started at Stein, right? Then Stein IAS, and then back to Stein. So tell me about the evolution. Just what is the evolution? What really took place there, and why back to Stein now?
Well, we actually started out in New York as Stein, Patrick and Rogan. I ultimately had to actually over the course of time, you part ways with partners, and people go on to do what they go on to do, and we ultimately became Stein, Patrick and Rogan, Stein Rogan, then Stein Partners Brand Activation, and then we merged with IAS, and IAS is a UK-based B2B specialist agency. and we merged with
Uh-huh.
them because we were seeking to create a global agency brand, which we did. Uh,
Yep.
and they actually had been founded even before I started my agency in the North England as
Mm-hmm.
IAS, which stands for Industrial Arts Services. So
Mm-hmm.
Stein and IAS merged to become Stein IAS. And then very
Uh-huh.
recently, this year, in fact, we rebranded
Mm-hmm.
as Stein. And we're about 10 years
Okay.
into the merger. And it's really no longer, we don't think about it as a merger anymore. We're just a company. And
Mm-hmm.
it felt like
Mm-hmm.
the clarity around Stein, the simplicity around Stein, the strength of the name, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to do a new visual identity around it, and to tell the story of where we are now, and part of the
Mm-hmm.
continuation of where we've been with a focus on where we're going. So that was
Sure.
so that's kind of and IAS went through its own permutation. So, you've been in an
Yeah.
agency for, if an agency has existed long enough, you can be sure there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
a sequence of naming things that go on over the course of the agency's life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's even coming back again, like the music reference, you have Jefferson Airplane that became Jefferson Starship, that became Starship.
Yeah.
Right. So the evolution as members are, going in and out. And so, no, that's interesting. What's it feel like, though, to have a brand that you started 40 years ago, right? With your own name? Think about that. Your name is it's your legacy, number one. And when people reference the agency, it's your actual name. Like, what does that feel like to be the business owner with the firm that does incredible global work, and it's your name
Well,
surrounding it?
it feels great. It feels it's very satisfying, but Stein is it's the sum of its people and the sum of its intellectual
Mhm.
property and the sum of its processes, but
Mhm.
mostly it's always been and still is the sum of its people. And
Mhm.
I serve as the chairman of Stein, and Kate
Yes.
McNevin joined us this year at the beginning of the year, coming over from MRM and McCann as our global CEO.
Mhm.
And she's
Mhm.
just an amazing leader, an amazing person that's going to really already helping us scale
Mhm.
the business in a significant way. So,
Yes.
but we've had wonderful
Yeah.
people throughout, and I think that any agency, maybe. Well, this is a good conversation, right? So, yeah, we're about like 2 minutes into the conversation, and I'm about to say AI.
Mhm.
But I think that historically agencies, the great agencies, ride on the backs of
Mhm.
great people and great talent, and that's certainly been
Mhm.
the case for
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
us. And so, the thing about Stein, it's my
Mhm.
name, but it's also kind of not my name. It's the name of the company, and it's the name. All of the people who are
Yes.
behind me, behind this wall, are
Yeah.
they're just we've been blessed with fantastic people through the years. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so there's been a consistency, but always a progressive evolution in what we offer, how we think, and what our people are able to do and deliver, both from the standpoint of the
Yes.
agency for their clients, but also for themselves. And so I think it's,
Yeah.
and I was about to say AI, so now I will say it. And one of the conversations I think that all of us have right now is in the agency
Mhm.
world on the client side with brands is
Mhm.
the relativity of
Mhm.
people and human ingenuity and AI and artificial intelligence, and the
Yeah.
relativity of all that
Yes.
becomes an incredibly important conversation that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's something that's not going away. And you made really also a great point earlier. And there's a few pieces that I want to kind of get into from what you just talked about. But number one is really the people, right? The sum of its people, which is really key. And also for brands working with agencies, just for myself, I've been on the brand, media, and agency side of the business. So I've sort of seen all the different angles. And to me, really that partnership between brand and agency is really key. And for, I think, an agency to do its best work, the brand needs to make sure that they're engaging the agency the correct way. And you're working really as one singular team. And I've seen where in relationships where it hasn't been as tight, it's been reflected in their go-to-market strategy, right? Versus other teams that really work well together and I think respect one another and have that cohesive unit is what really brings a great campaign to life, let alone to market, because it's hard enough to sell a campaign internally through kind of the C-suite to say, oh, we've got this interesting creative idea, even though it might be out of the box for our business in financial services, but trust us, this is what's going to resonate. And I think it takes that team to really pull together that value proposition that could be bought upon internally across the constituents, but then also executed correctly into the marketplace. And just that makes me think about, like, how do you really work with your clients? And as you said, what is that relationship like? And what are some of the learnings that you can give our audience in how they can work with agencies and what that relationship could be? And what are some of the best practices that you've seen over your tenure?
So, great question. And I think that sort of the magic of the agency client relationship, and it's not always achieved. And sometimes I feel like it's achieved less than it used to be. The longevity of and the depth and breadth of client agency relationships is, it's been under pressure for a number of years, and whether like because of AI or because of insourcing or because of specialization and whatever it may be. But I'll go back to the whole people thing, and it's you talk about soul. That was one of the things that we want to talk about, and I think great agencies they have soul, and when they find a soulmate, a client, then that kind of amazing relationship happens, and it's a relationship that develops and evolves and progresses and sometimes regresses, but ultimately progresses over time.
Yes.
But it's all based on the that you have found. This may sound a little over the top to folks, but you kind of have found a soulmate in a client, or you have found a soulmate in an agency if you're coming from a client perspective. And I think that the fundamentals of that, or the fundamental of that, ultimately is establishing and building trust. And so that's an obvious statement, and you'd say, well, trust has to be. But the level of trust and transparency, and the willingness to not be performative in what you do, I think is ultimately what knits teams together. And we actually try to. It's not that pitching new clients. There's always a bit of performance involved in that, and in the day there used to be a lot more than there is now, I think. But trying to be a little bit less performative and a little bit more real about what it's really going to be like to work, what it's going to be like to engage with us, think with us, argue with us, debate things, push each other, and that kind of if you can get off on the right foot there, then you've established trust, and then you have to working at it. You have to keep building it, and so. That's what we spend a lot of time thinking about and doing. And, fortunately, we have a great group of clients that we work quite successfully, and we continue to. But, there's since we're in the realm of music here, you'll probably remember the lyric better, but it's Paul McCartney singing. And the gist of what he's singing, and I think it's like at the end of One Side of Abbey Road, and maybe at this point, but the notion is you get what you give. You only get what you give. And that, I think, if that's the agency philosophy, then you will build trust. And if that's the agency philosophy and the personal philosophies of the people at the agency, it will build trust, because you're focused on giving in order to get, not get. And I think that's basically how I live my professional life. It's how I live my personal life, and it's kind of at the core of what I think is important. And so that's it's a few short words, but if you live up to it and live by it, I think it makes a very, very big difference, and especially in today's world. But it's
well, what you just mentioned is it's a universal theme in theory, right, of how people could live their lives. And as you're saying, not only from an agency client relationship, but a human to human relationship. And as you said, that's how you're living your life. And even as you said, soul. We came back to soul and trust. As I think about trust, I think of the book Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And where they define trust there, it's not trusting that someone will get something done. It's actually having trust in each other where you can be vulnerable, come up with ideas, and you're not going to be judged for it, right? It's that kind of innate sort of trust that, hey, we can be in a room, we can be creative, we can identify different ways, and I'm going to feel comfortable conveying my thoughts. And I think it's that openness, and you almost, as you said, it's kind of, is it a soulmate? Are your souls kind of matching in that capacity? And then you can really develop that trust and build that interesting momentum for whatever it is that's being built in that relationship. So it's really interesting as you mentioned that. And then kind of the advent of AI that's come into play. What is your thoughts on AI's integration? Because I go back and forth as a creator. Of course, I think human creation is great. I think AI, human assisted AI is wonderful. Some people feel AI is cheating, but then at the other side, I feel like, well, if you're going to hire someone to do a job, why can't technically AI be that hire? I'm not saying you shouldn't hire someone, but like thinking about it that way, where why do we give more credence to a human doing something versus AI potentially doing something that's human assisted? So what are your thoughts on, AI in the industry and how it's impacting creative? Because it isn't impacting creative quite a bit right now, and how you see that further integrating into the relationship with your clients?
Big question.
Yeah.
So we are very AI forward in what we do. We're not as big as WPP, and we're not as big as Accenture Song, and I'm well aware of their AI investments and Publicis and so on, and what those investments are doing and yielding. But we're a scrappy bunch, and we're I think that the AI tools that we're either using from a best of breed standpoint or that we're developing ourselves are very powerful. One example is we're one of a handful of independent agencies that through strategic partnership has access to the LinkedIn API ecosystem, and so we get a depth of data and a breadth of data that is extraordinary. And so how do we use that? How do we interpret it? We apply it. Well, AI is an answer to that. And so by building an AI layer around the data that we get and building our own audience platform that we call Origin, I think it's a great example of where the power of AI is enormous, and and it's actually power that's beyond. I don't want to say it's beyond human power, but it takes a lot of humans to do the kind of number crunching and that kind of real time work. I think that's like an easy application of where AI is assistant to what we do. Creativity is interesting because, again, we use it a lot. We use it all different ways, shapes, and forms. My concern, the big concern here is when AI, if AI, not when AI, AI creates a race to mediocrity. And so if AI flattens things, and AI or AI generated creative becomes de facto good enough for a number of people in the world, clients in the world, brands in the world, and so on. I'm not saying it will, but if it does, because you can accomplish quite a lot, then we've lost the. I think we will lost something that's the fundamental human spark that makes life worth living, that makes creative worth creating, that makes art worth creating. And so, I think that we just have to have eyes wide open that we don't allow ourselves to get into it. Well, it's good enough, and we'll just use AI because honestly, it's good enough. Because honestly, it's not good enough. And so I think it's an incredible tool, and we're all in all the time. But I do have a concern. Honestly, I have a concern, and I don't think it's me being like kind of an old timer in the business or anything like that. I think I've been through seismic changes in marketing in my career. I've been through seismic changes in culture, in the socio-political environment, all of these things all of the time.
Yep.
And we probably kind of made our bones as an agency at the dawn of the internet, where we were a digital first mover. So, imagine a digital first mover and a B2B agency. And, if the agency world was slow on the uptake, the B2B agency world was slow. It was very slow on the uptake. And we were all in. And, even back at that point in time, there were similar conversations about technology is going to eat the world. It's going to eat human beings, and it's going to render them irrelevant, and it's going to disintermediate everyone all the time. And, our belief is that the internet was going to unlock enormous opportunities from a marketing standpoint, and ultimately from a business and brand standpoint and a societal standpoint. That proved to be the case. And I'm very hopeful that it's the case now. And because if it is, it will be so in a much bigger way. If it's not the case, and we allow ourselves to get into a race to the bottom, then we'll have dug a hole again, may sound a little bit exaggerated or hyperbolic. We'll have dug a hole for humanity.
Yeah.
And I don't. And humans are really good at that, by the way. We dig our own holes, and we dig great big holes.
We do.
So let's not do that. How about Greg? How about we don't do that? Let's not do that. So I think that if we if we avoid the dark side, then
if we're able to control it, it's hard because there's always, as you said, there's always going to be the actors that just allow it. And so, like, for instance, right now we're talking AI and AI creative. You have what's called like AI slop, right? Wow. You see it all over the internet. It's platforms. You can just put in a couple words, videos, music. Yeah. And and unfortunately it's creating confusion, right? And so with disinformation campaigns, or even, it's not even disinformation campaigns alone, it's any form of content that people are starting to believe is real, unfortunately. And you being at the forefront reminds me of when the internet really first started to proliferate in the late 90s, when I was getting involved. And it was still predominantly, I would say, a traditional mindset in terms of advertising. I remember being in agency meetings, company meetings, and everyone just thought, they were into billboards, TV, traditional magazines, newspapers, traditional. They're like, oh, this internet thing, this doesn't help our brand. We can't track anything here. This is going to go nowhere. And then all of a sudden, obviously, it blew up. It blew up in two ways. It blew up when it crashed in around 2000, and then started to blow back, built itself back up, and then became a wonderful environment for people to market themselves. But getting access to the LinkedIn API, so does that mean that you have a better understanding of how the algorithm works? Because one of the challenges across any social platform is understanding the nuances of algorithms and what it chooses to distribute in terms of content.
No. That's not. It's really we get a richer flow of data, of anonymized audience data. So
for your origin
product that allows us to approach things like persona development, audience development, hyper segmentation, content proclivity, and all of these kinds of things that flow into a go-to-market, and then it enables us to activate those things as well. And so that's really what it does. But it's sort of like it's a little bit of Stein magic that we have, the platform, and clients love it, and it resonates a lot. And so but it's not about having a deeper dive into the LinkedIn algorithm.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure. It was like both sides to kind of get the access into kind of that organic play, but then also, as you said, kind of that persona play as well, which I'm sure really helps to build out the, obviously if you're able to better understand, have better data, understand audiences, you can build a better journey and a better map and produce the right content at the right time for individuals. Which brings me, we're going to go back now. So we're kind of going into the future, but now we're going to take it back to the beginning. So B2B marketing, when you started Stein, there was a lack of the technology that is available now. How is B2B marketing from your perspective and just what you've seen, how has it changed? And are the same, maybe some of the, like when I look at marketing, like the skeleton and the principles are there, just sort of everything else on top of it sort of has changed, but there's still, as you said, but like we were talking before, you give what you get. There's like universal principles. What have you seen change or not change across B2B marketing from, when you first started to really to now, removing just the technology and the ability to reach people, but just has there been a fundamental shift in how people market, in a B2B capacity?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more than that even. It's so much even than a fundamental shift. And having been at it a good long period of time, if you think about the waves of change that affected marketing, period, have certainly affected B2B marketing. So whether that's digital, when digital became mainstream and a thing, and digital ecosystems and all of that, whether it became social at a point in time, MarTech, ad tech, all of those kinds of things. The important things that I think are, and the greatest, I think, the leap in B2B marketing has occurred, I'm going to say, in the last 5 years. There's been progress and progress and progress and progress, but there's actually been a leap. And I think the leap has to do with sort of an internal sense within B2B marketers and an external manifestation of that. And I think the internal is a level of confidence and acumen. And if you know a lot of B2B marketers, I know a lot of B2B marketers, they're an amazing group of people. They work in complex businesses and they often work with somewhat less resource than B2C companies may have, but they're very, very, very smart people, and they're very resilient people, and they have a huge amount of heart. And it's an incredible community. It really is an incredible community. But I think that community has a lot of confidence now, and more and more and more and more confidence in any number of things. So it's master technology, always room for improvement. It's master data, always room for improvement. It's master channels, omni-channel, always room for improvement, and all of those things. But I think there's a confidence around the role that brand plays in B2B. B2B, almost, brand was, and in some cases still is, kind of a bad word or thought of, but in the C-suite as something that was fluffy and not core to driving business growth. And that's what's really changing. And I think that there's been so much time, attention, thought, framework development, model development, data supporting data around this, that I think this is it's an incredible time in the lives of B2B marketers and the role that marketing plays within organizations. That's become incredible. The up-leveling of talent, the up-leveling of skill, the emphasis on creativity and the quality of creativity. So these things they're all related. And but the Creative B2B Alliance launched only 4 years ago. So this year at Cannes was the fourth year of the Creative B2B Alliance. This year at Cannes was the first Lions B2B Summit at Cannes, where they created a bespoke event within Cannes Lions for B2B, and it was a massive success. And but I think it's just, these are all the wind that fills the sail of B2B right now, and that it's a very, very important time in B2B, really exciting time. And there's so much runway ahead for us in the B2B space. And I say that for brands, I say it for agencies, I say it for companies like Goldcast and other tech provider and so on. And and again, I think that I refer to this. I was the Creative B2B Lions Cannes jury president in its second year 2 years ago, and I was on the inaugural jury as well. But I called this the B2B decade because all of the dots are connecting, all of the are aligning, whatever metaphor or cliche you want to throw out there. But I think that there's so
Mhm.
much energy in the space right now that it becomes unstoppable.
Well, I'd say I agree with you. I feel like it's continuing to grow. And as we talk about, technology is enabling it, right? More information, you can make more informed decisions. I think the kind of because of the information that we're able to collect and even measure the efficacy of our campaigns, a little differently than we've ever been able to in the past. I think there's more confidence probably among the C-suite in what marketing is doing, and it's not just a function that's there to make one sheets or pitch decks look pretty. It's now they're now able to become a growth driver in the business because you can basically build out a model with X amount of dollars. We can generate X amount of potential income based off of this and substantiate it with data. So I think it really helps bring more emphasis to the ability of a marketing function across B2B, which is interesting. And you're talking about Ken and your time at Ken. I would just love to know, like, while you were there, what was really one of the, obviously you're attending events, there's awards. What did you find to really be most valuable about attending, that conference, that event series?
The most valuable thing, and there are many, many valuable things, but the most valuable thing really was the community of B2B marketers who were present.
Mm-hmm.
And so the B2B summit there, and I'm pretty sure that Ken will repeat it, maybe scale it next year, was a gathering
Mm-hmm.
of a couple hundred plus senior marketers. And
Mm-hmm.
there was such a great direct, candid conversation about where we are, where we need to go, what the
Mm-hmm.
challenges are. There were great
Mm-hmm.
brands represented there, but really the
Mm-hmm.
vibe
Yeah.
was incredible, and just the sense that B2B is the growth part of marketing. B2B is the most dynamic
Mm.
sector of marketing. Can't choose to be the
Yeah.
province of B2C almost entirely, is now a B
Mm-hmm.
destination, and it should be, and it will be. And I think it was really
Mm-hmm.
that vibe and the takeaway and the engagement with the clients who were there, and the brands that were there, and the other agency leaders who were there, and the
Mm-hmm.
platforms and media brands that were there, and just the sense
Yeah.
that we're pulling in the same direction. The industry is pulling in the
Mm.
same direction, and
Sure.
it was just that, and you felt it at that part of that summit, but you felt it pervasively
Yeah.
across Canada. And I
Mhm.
think Lions and the Life
Okay.
Organization, and Paul Coxall from Lions and Work, and Simon Cook,
Mhm.
just great. And the Creative B2B Lions this year, which was my good friend Wendy Walker from Salesforce, was the jury president
Mhm.
this year, and she was fantastic.
Oh,
But the awards were
yeah.
great, and to sit in the Palais and be among
Mhm.
a couple 3,000 people, and looking at the
Mhm.
quality, the sheer quality of work from B2B that was on stage there, it's just such an
Yeah.
exciting thing. And so you go the summit
Mhm.
to the awards to really the panoply of content that's available there. Brilliant,
Mhm.
just brilliant.
But so with all the campaigns that you were exposed to while there, you said just many great campaigns. Were there any campaigns that after you reviewed, you're like, oh man, I wish I came up with that campaign? Because I just know, like, as a creator myself, or even a songwriter, and even interviewing other songwriters, like, oh man, that song, I wish I wrote that song. Is there any campaign that you saw there that you're like, oh man, I wish I built that campaign? That was just a really great idea and a great concept and a great execution.
No, so there were plenty of those, and
Yeah.
and this year, as in past years, and I look at some of the work that Spotify has done and delivered
Mhm.
there, and some of the work that Workday has done and delivered there, and any number of other brands, Apple has done and delivered there, and
Mhm.
so on, and just brilliant work, brilliant. And
Mhm.
you look at it, and you look at the level of strategic insight that went into it, the human truth that went into it. You look at the craft in delivering and executing the work. You look at the connection between strategy and execution and outcome. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of that. But I do have to say, and I was really, I was very proud because we shortlisted. So Stein shortlisted this year,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so disappointed that we didn't medal, but I'm proud that we
Hmm.
shortlisted because it very,
Hmm.
very, 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 very small percentage of all the B2B work ever, in a course of a year that
Yes.
shortlisted can, let alone wins an award. But
Yes.
it comes. I want to just talk about for a minute because you talked about soul before, and you talked brand
Yeah.
before, and the work that we
Hmm.
entered was for our client Mack Trucks, and we work with them now for I think about three
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
Mack Trucks is an iconic American brand, and
Hmm.
the opportunity to lean into a human truth and create a campaign for the brand. And just think about this. Mack Trucks, highly competitive space. Mack Trucks, major player in the space. And we created a brand campaign that didn't have any trucks in it. Um, there wasn't a truck to be found in the campaign. What we did do is we brought back the bulldog, and we put the bulldog in the map. Bulldog is actually the emblem that goes on the hood. It's their
Yeah.
logo. And
Yep.
we put it front and center in their advertising and marketing again.
Hmm.
And the campaign was resoundingly successful. And getting that sold through because it was all about the
Hmm.
soul of the brand, right? That was all about
Yes.
cultural
Yeah.
connection to
Yeah. The
America,
essence.
and
Yeah.
we pared it down to that. And naturally there was pushback internally within Met, but ultimately the work was approved and went forward and was very, very successful. But it's about soul, it's about insight, it's about soul,
Yeah.
it's about soulmates because the client trusted
Yeah.
us, we trusted the client's organization trusted the marketing team there, and they're a brilliant marketing team. And you put all of that together, and that's what gets to great work, and that's what gets to great outcomes. And
Yes.
B2B can use lots and lots and lots and lots of that. And but we're really getting there,
Yeah.
I think, an industry.
Hmm.
So it's very exciting, but it's all to do
Yeah.
with brand and soul.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. And especially across what I'm starting to see more and more. And I've just always kind of felt this way in any marketing initiatives that I've put together in the past, where it's not about just trying to sell the brands, right? As you said, you took the truck away. Let's not try to sell the product. Let's connect with an end audience for something that's meaningful to them and then establish that connection. And you can always down the road have that conversation about what that product is, once you've identified that there's a match, but you've connected in a different capacity. And I'm always mentioning that to different brands. Go out there and show value, add value, educate people, connect with them on maybe a visceral level, right? And versus just saying, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product. It doesn't necessarily connect. And as we said, this is a B2B play versus just a B2C play. And I had the privilege to interview some of your team at the A&A Awards recently, where you took home an award for that specific campaign, which leads me to you're also a board director for the A&A, and there is a scholarship award in your name for future talent. So I'd love to learn more about that.
I'm so proud of it, and I'm so grateful to A&E New York for establishing that. And I've been on the A&E New York board, for quite a long time, and at a point, A&A asked if I would become president of the board, and so I accepted, and I was president for about 5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
over that course of time, we made a lot of progress as an association and as an organization, and in terms of delivering greater value back to the B2B world and the New York community and the global community. And so we flourished as an organization and with a terrific board and terrific colleagues. And
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things that I did and we did is we established a relationship with Baruch. Um, if you
Mm,
know
okay.
Baruch in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
that Baruch is a part of City College, the City College network, and Baruch serves student populations that aren't necessarily the best resourced communities, and it has a real
Mm-hmm.
focus on providing equity in education, and it has
Yeah.
just a brilliant, deserved reputation for bringing young people and young professionals along and create career paths and talented, motivated people, multicultural,
Mm-hmm.
very diverse, all of these things. And so we really wanted to build that relationship with Baruch. We could kind
Mm-hmm.
of help support Baruch, and Baruch would bring people into our world, because I think
Mm-hmm.
the agency, marketer, brand, academic connection is
Yeah.
super important. And
Yes.
by virtue of having done that and established it when I stepped down as president, though I'm still on the board, when I stepped down as president, to thank me for my service, they established a scholarship program, funded a scholarship program with Baruch that 4 marketing students from their undergrad or B school are awarded the scholarship in the course of a year, based on
Mm-hmm.
how well they're doing and certain other criteria. So it's incredibly
Yeah.
meaningful, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah, I could definitely imagine. And so for Baruch, I'm a visiting lecturer there
Great,
as
then you
well,
are.
and
It's
so I
another
go
point of
in
connection
and
for us.
yes,
You got music, you
yeah.
got
So
fruit.
it's another point of connection. Yes. So I go in, I teach about marketing, digital transformation, as well as AI. Great school. I love the school and love the faculty team there. They're great. So it's fantastic. So, obviously A&A, you have an award that you've established for the next generation. What keeps you inspired? So you're obviously involved in all these different capacities, but you as a creative, you as a business owner, you as someone that really has to keep morale up at an organization, help potentially even with morale with your clients, help to kind of push the industry forward. How do you stay inspired? What is it that keeps you inspired and going, like on a daily, yearly basis? What keeps you like really excited about the industry?
So there are a few things. One is
Mhm.
I think the ongoing elevation of B2B, the ongoing up leveling of B2B,
Yeah.
from when I started to where we are, to where I know we will get to, is very exciting. It's
Hmm.
this continuum of growth, and as an industry, it's this continuum of growth, and there's lots
Hmm.
more to come, and that's incredibly motivating. Also, as
Yeah.
an agency, that same continuum of growth, and so this is all I told you at the beginning. This is only my second job ever, and I've had it a long
Yeah.
time, and it doesn't ever get boring. And there's
Hmm.
always a new frontier, and we prided ourselves
Uh-huh.
on being at the frontier of what an agency can do together in collaboration with its
Hmm.
clients. But I think that kind of focus on, we never being quite satisfied with where we are, and always thinking about where we're
Hmm.
going and how we're going to get there.
Hmm.
And it becomes a
Hmm.
culture in the organization, and
Yeah.
then the people we motivate each other. And so, there's
Yes.
nothing better and more exciting than to be with our creative teams, be with our leadership teams, to be
Yep.
with our account teams, our strategy teams, everybody,
Hmm.
because we're kind of on a mission together. And I think that's a very
Yeah.
exciting thing. And we've never lost that. And, people come and
Yes.
go. They do. It's as they should. But we've never lost
Yeah.
that as a culture in the company. And
Yeah.
I love it. And it just makes me excited about it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was a word you used earlier, which is funny. I apply the same way to any form of creative, which is the word craft, right? It's the more you do it, the better you get at it. And there's always more you can learn, right? There's always nuances, new cultures, new ways of applying new technologies. So that in itself, if one is inspired or ambitious enough to want to continue to make themselves better, that in its own right could actually help with with one's own internal inspiration. So now that you've been in the industry, we talked about brand, we've talked about soul. I just want to delve into strategy really quickly. And from this perspective, over your tenure, what have you seen that B2B brands or B2B marketing initiatives have done wrong? Like, what have you seen along the way that people just need to stay away from your experience, or what are people doing wrong? What have you seen them do wrong? Just, I'd love to get some examples. So to make sure that we help people to avoid any potential landmines across their own careers.
Wow. That's another like we need a few more podcasts to get into all of these things, Roll. I think that strategy is often not well understood, and I think that what strategy really is and what it really isn't, and what passes for strategy isn't always really strategy in a B2B scheme of things. And strategy is about to like massively oversimplify, it's basically where you play, how you win, and so and I think that one of the things that B2B can tend to do that it needs to tend not to do is live within category convention, and to genericize. Probably you've done this yourselves, but if you're looking at a category that a client, prospective client is in, and I'm not going to pick a category, not going to name a name, would never do that. But if you put all of the strategic premise, proposition, and then say which company is that, versus that, versus that, and it's very hard to do, very hard to distinguish. And so the clarity and the distinctiveness of that comes out of us, comes through strategy, and then flows into communication, flows into how the business actually operates and what its vision and goals are. It's often I think that it's an area where B2B has a lot of room to improve. And I think the other component part of that is, and again, we talked about this a little bit before as well, human insight, human truth, and letting a human insight really help drive what strategy is, whether it's from a big strategy or a creative strategy perspective. And so again, I think that you start to see more and more of it, but it's an area again where work is devoid of that, then it becomes kind of mediocre B2B, not great B2B. So
sure.
It's kind of the answer, but that's what I see from a strategy standpoint.
And then also, like, it's funny. I hear these questions asked all the time as well. So I'm just going to use this as an example: content marketing, right? Something that everyone does. And so I hear questions fly across the room, just across all different forms of conversations. We'll call it conferences, boardrooms, everywhere. Well, what's going to make ours stand out if everyone else is right now creating content about how to survive the tariffs, we'll just say, or something else? What's going to make our content stand out and be successful versus all of the other firms hitting the same exact audiences? Like, how would you respond to that if someone were to ask you, that particular question when you're designing something for them?
So I would say that understanding the role of content across the buyer journey, customer journey, and understanding the different roles that different types of content have across that, but it all being driven by a strategy, and a strategy that's developed with the same emphasis on differentiation and distinction that you would apply to any other aspect of the business. And so, and again, I think this is insights driven to a large extent. And there's something that we like to talk about. So thought leadership is a part of content, big part of content. Yep. But there's very little true thought leadership in the world. There's a lot of content that's put out there that is labeled thought leadership, but it's really not, because what thought leadership needs to be is original thinking by a leader. And so that level of original thinking, and whether it's served up and it connects with people because it is original and gives them a new and distinct point of view about something, whether it's done in a way that's refreshing. So maybe maybe from a tactical standpoint, it's actually entertaining and engaging from that standpoint. So I think that rather than get into create torrents of content using AI and to churn content and become a content factory, to spend a little bit more time thinking about what's your distinctive entry point into the conversation and where can you add genuine value in a conversation. And so I don't think AI is going to ever do that. I think that's where the human component comes in again. And so I think that there's been a sea of content for a long time now, B2B, and there's a lot of evidence, a lot of data say that there's diminishing engagement with it, and again, a base level of pretty average stuff out there. So not being average is probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, I was saying earlier, it's hard because people are trying to balance speed to market with quality, right? And it just seems like quality tends to win, right? And even coming back to brand and soul, it's, as you said, it needs to start from a thought leader. And as a brand, having a persona of its own, in theory, content coming from that organization should have that sort of feel, and the tone, cadence, and essentially just the overarching verbiage or lexicon nomenclature that comes from that particular brand that's maybe somewhat unique, interesting, and different. So whenever someone reads a piece of content, they know exactly what firm that's from. And I think conditioning people over time with that also potentially, I'm assuming, would make it more distinctive to that particular brand and stand out.
Without a doubt. I mean, it hits the nail on the head for sure. So I have to ask you a question, Greg.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I know you're supposed to be asking me questions, but it's only fair. You've asked me a lot of questions. I probably answered in a half-assed manner, but doing my best.
And just so everyone knows, Tom did not have these questions in advance. This is all real time. In fact, I didn't even have these questions in advance.
Give me. I'm not going to ask you for faves because that's very hard to do, especially in the spur of the moment. 3 favorite musicians, bands, groups, however you want to address that. What are 3 faves?
All right, 3 faves. That's a great question. So professionally, I'm originally a drummer. So I have musicians. I would say Stuart Copeland was an influence. Neil from the Police, Neil Peart was a big influence. I also love Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac. Just great groove, great drummer. There's so many just wonderful drummers out there. In terms of bands that I love, it depends on the genre. I was just reading an article yesterday about how Pink Floyd, a band that I love, how Roger Waters, when David Gilmour was just noodling on the opening of Wish You Were Here, Roger Waters was like, "Ooh, that's interesting. What is that?" And and David Gilmour was like, "Oh, it's just this little bit I'm working on." And so they ended up writing "Wish You Were Here" from that. But apparently Roger Waters was worried at first that David had ripped that off of somewhere because he was excited about it. So but it ended up being original, right? So I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, Police fan, Rush fan, but also Sabrina Carpenter's new album. I'm digging Sabrina Carpenter's new album. Love The Weeknd. Dua Lipa, so there's a lot of great artists out there. If we were to take it even further back, I mean, Gershwin's awesome. I love listening to Mozart, especially at night when going to bed. I had this CD, Mozart for Massage, was fantastic, relaxing while going to sleep at night. And then there's just a whole, I would say my music collection is really quite vast, but just off the top of my head, those were just ones that happen to come to mind.
All right. I'm with you on almost everything everyone that you mentioned. I'm not the biggest Rush fan, but it's just, it's just a character flaw that I have, so well, I'm going to come back at you. And so, the first, so this is not one of my favorites, but it's just a interesting piece of information because the first concert I ever saw was Black Sabbath. And it was great. I loved it.
Hmm.
But I'm
Yes.
not really that much of a heavy metal guy. But Ozzy was
No.
special.
I saw them with when they had Ronnie James Dio as a lead singer back in the 90s, I think it was. I saw Black Sabbath then. Yeah.
So that one of the, I don't know if it was the second or third, but right up there until like first concerts was the Allman Brothers.
Ah,
So Allman Brothers with Dwayne Allman and Barry
wow.
Oakley and the original Allman Brothers.
Yeah.
And I've been an Allman Brothers fan,
Hmm.
big fan
Hmm.
all the way through, and
Hmm.
that carries over to I love Tedeschi Trucks now. So Derek Trucks, I think, is a top 5
Oh,
guitarist, and
fantastic guitar player.
Hendrix and Stevie Vaughan,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
right up there with those guys.
And
Um,
Almonds. So I saw them when they, I guess, reunited. I saw them up at Oakdale when Oakdale had a theater in the round that would spin. Marshall Tucker was opening. And then
I
I
love
saw them
Marcel
a
Tucker.
few times. Yeah, Marshall Tucker. And I saw them a few times also at the Beacon Theater. So I was going to be doing some business with the Almonds and O'Teal, talking bass players. And you're a bass player, phenomenal bass player who's also playing with the Dead now. But I forget what they call themselves now. Not they're not the Dead. They the New Dead, not the New Dead. The Grateful Dead. I forgot about the Grateful Dead. I'm a Grateful Dead fan. I listen to them less now, but that's another great band from historically. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think music is it's something that whether it's enjoying music or whether it's playing music or
Hmm.
both is it's a mind expanding thing.
Yeah.
It's a perspective expanding thing, and also if you play in a band, if anything's going to ever teach you what great collaboration yields,
Hmm.
that's what
Yes.
will do it. And I played in a number of bands through the years, but
Hmm.
I had my jazz phase, I had my
Hmm.
southern rock phase, I had my blues phase, I had my rock phase, and
Hmm.
even today, I love you too.
Yep.
I'm with you there. And Foo Fighters. How can you not love Foo Fighters? Well,
Yep.
I'm sure
Foods are
people don't.
great. Yeah. Yep. Great
But
songwriter.
I have pretty diverse tastes also.
Yeah.
Miles Davis, classical, right in there,
Miles is
contemporary
great.
music,
Yeah.
for sure. And but even for years, I really believed that I despised country music, but it turns out that I don't. It turns out that there's some of it that's
Yeah.
pretty darn good.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've been vibing on Highway Women lately,
Oh,
which is
interesting.
a country female supergroup,
Hmm.
Brandy Carlisle and others, and it's just great. I
Ah,
recommend it if you haven't listened, give it a
yes.
listen. Um,
Brandy Carlisle. Okay, interesting. I'll definitely have to check that out. So this is like a new, like a next phase in her career, I guess, or
I didn't think she does what she does, and
yeah.
when supergroups work, they do it as kind of a side
Yeah.
gig.
Yeah.
So very cool.
But it's funny talking about, so my first concert was Bon Jovi back in the late 80s on their Slippery When Wet tour. For me, I played same thing, all styles of music, just from, rock, classic rock, jazz, fusion, R&B, hip hop, or urban/hip hop. I played classical music back in like elementary school. And so it's my career, sort of or music career has kind of expanded all those different areas. And then also as a guitar player, being a songwriter, I love the Beatles too. I forgot to mention the Beatles. So Beatles like have a great sort of roadmap in constructing songs, and from that perspective, from an academic perspective, it's good. You shake your head. You're not a Beatles fan.
You can't leave out Brian Wilson then. If we're going
Oh,
going, can't leave out
Brian,
Brian Wilson. Not at all.
phenomenal songwriter, and
Phenomenal.
talking about even, mental health there, right? For him, he was misdiagnosed for years, right?
Yeah.
And so, just there's so many just great, and a lot of people, a drummer that a lot of people just hate. I don't know why they hate him, but he's a fantastic drummer, even pre-Genesis, then during Genesis, and then as and then as a songwriter and vocalist is Phil Collins,
Phil Collins is an amazing drummer.
Mhm.
But when he was a drummer for Genesis, the original Genesis,
Mhm.
he was spectacular. And then he became the
Mhm.
front and for the
Yeah.
band, and that's a whole nother career.
Yeah.
But I love Genesis back in the day, particularly, and I've always loved Peter Gabriel, another favorite of mine, and still going pretty darn strong. And so one of the great live performers. That's there, and we got to throw in Springsteen. We got to throw in the Rolling Stones. We got to keep going on this one.
Yeah.
But
Tony Levin on bass for Peter Gabriel.
I met Tony Levin. I met Tony Levin once. I met Ringo Starr once. I don't have that many like famous musician meetings, but I've met a few through the years. And Tony Levin was just cooler than cool.
Yeah, I could see that. He just seems like a cool cat. And what's the other gentleman's name that's a bass player with the long beard? He plays with Clapton. What's that? Oh, no, he plays with Clapton and everyone. That's the name is at the tip of my tongue, and it begins with an L. I forget his name now, but another fantastic. So many great players out there in music.
Yeah, Stanley Clarke.
Stanley Clarke. Yeah,
great. Billy Cobham, one of the great drummers. Yeah. Clarke.
Tony Thompson from Chic, and then the Power Station.
Yeah, there. Off we go. Hey, speaking of off I go. I'm gonna have.
I know we can just keep chatting here.
This podcast, or I'm gonna get in trouble for being massively late for my meeting I have to go to. So I have to wish you well and thank you for the conversation.
Yes, Tom, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for offering your perspective. And I just had a great time chatting just really about all the different topics and where our conversation kind of went through on this journey, but then also at the end, concluding it with, a passion of both of ours as well, which is music. So it's been great to connect with you on multiple levels today.
Yeah, many conversations to come, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Good luck on your meeting, and I'll see you soon. Thank you again.
Take care. Lovely. Bye.